What is going on, everybody? My name is Conor Lawler. Welcome back to another week of Hero or Zero here on the Heroes for Hire podcast. We are back again talking one comic book character every single week. We talk their good points and their bad points, so we generally just give you a bit of a rundown of everything to do with that character. Now, I am unfortunately not joined as always by my partner in crime, my best pal, Mr. Shaun Mead. He is away this week, so I'm taking the reins myself. I felt like we need to know about some characters. Every week, we got to keep that database going, and so I said, cool, I can do the episode by myself. We're going to cover a character that I really, really enjoy. A character has become very famous over the last few years, and I think is a lot of fun to talk about because he's ridiculous, but also a fan favourite. You've already seen the title, by the way, so you know who I'm talking about. If this is your first episode, you do not have to do anything. There's normally two of us. You can go back and check the other episodes. I swear, it's not like I have a girlfriend, but she lives in a different country. No, I genuinely, there is somebody else that does this. But if you don't want to do that, if it's your first episode, you don't have to do anything. If it's your second and above, I would really appreciate a 5 stars on Spotify or on iTunes. It's got the 3 little dots at the top of Spotify. If you could just click on that and give us a rating. On iTunes, we'd really appreciate 5 stars, or even a comment, a share, whatever way you want to let people know about the pod. Now, also you could just tell one human being that we exist, just the one, very important. And we also have a Patreon where we will be releasing a new movie review next week at some stage, which we do every single month. We go back and we review old movies, that maybe old superhero movies, old comic book based movies, and see if they still hold up. Last month we did have to actually review Madam Web because our patrons get to decide what we review and they hate us. But this month I'm hoping they'll be nicer. They might not be, but I'm hoping they will. We live in eternal hope that they will do something they've never done before. But yeah, so this is Hero Zero. There's no more time for talking about other stuff. I really appreciate your support, by the way. But yeah, I want to talk about this week, Kiteman. And I mean, Kiteman obviously big over the last few years due to, the Harley Quinn show. You also have just a DC rebirth. When that came around, he became Kiteman Hell Yeah, which is his famous catchphrase, and he became a cult favourite because he's shit. And I really enjoy that. It's like the Condiment King kind of style, that he starts off as terrible and then he's still terrible, but he's given a tragic backstory and now he's kind of liked. So Kiteman is interesting because he's actually one of the older comic book characters. He first appeared in 1960. Now, this is like a D-list villain in the DC universe in Gotham, which a lot of the D-list characters were coming from in Gotham. Gotham, like, Batman has such a great rogues gallery, but they threw a lot of shit at the wall to get that great rogues gallery, because every week he just faced another villain of the week that was just based off a random thing. And so Kiteman, not a very particularly threatening villain, first appeared August 1960 in Batman 133. Creators were Bill Finger, creator of Batman, and Dick Sprang. So pretty good, I would say, roots in terms of character creation. Now, to be fair to Bill, they were probably creating a lot of characters. They were creating a new character probably every second week. So one of them that they came up with was Kiteman. Now, for decades, it was hard to do this report because for decades, Kiteman, he had no real official origin, he had no real depth, and he was basically just kind of underutilized. Batman was never really going to be killed by a D-lister such as Kiteman, but it was kind of funny to see the villain think he actually has a chance. And Kiteman's thing is that, very similar to some other villains like the Killer Moth or characters such as that, in that they don't know that they're the butt of the joke, and that is the joke. They're like, this is the time I'm definitely killing Batman, and then they're like, okay, well, what's your thing? Well, I really love kites. like, you have the Joker over there with like a machine gun, and he's like, I'm going to give it a go. And he's like, yeah, but he might have a machine gun, but I have, you know, gliding materials. So, I mean, we're probably the same level of villain. So Charles Browne is Kiteman's name, and he had two things in common with the protagonist of the Peanut strip that's very famous, Charlie Browne: his name and his obsession with kites. Since he was a child, he's been fascinated by their way of defying gravity and of bending wind to their advantage to take flight. I'm not making this up. This is in the comic books. And he decided that whatever he would have done as an adult, it would involve kites, because he just loves kites so much. Now look, normally such a resolution would have disappeared as you get older. I wanted to be a fire truck, for example, for a few years. Eventually you're like, I don't really have the ability to Optimus Prime myself into a truck. I might just get a job, I don't know, looking at Excel sheets. Exciting stuff. So, like, normally people get out of that, but in Gotham City, everybody's gotta have a fixation. Everybody's gotta have a thing, a gimmick. So Browne learned to fly as a pilot, and he also became a very capable engineer. He studied aeronautics and somehow turned out to be a decent inventor. Somehow. Planes, however, weren't his main goal. He wanted to fly on kites and to prove their superiority to the entire world, not just to himself, but to everyone, because people were going around in planes thinking that was the peak. And to Charles, that wasn't good enough. He couldn't have people thinking that, you know, these weird fucking planes with engines, useless. What you really need is some sort of thing that you can jump off a hill and just kind of glide a little bit. So, in order to do so, he sold his services to a local mob boss. So he wanted to prove the superiority of kites, and to do that, he basically got involved with the local mob boss, otherwise known as Big Bill Collins. And Big Bill wanted him to do a few jobs, and he was like, I'm going to do the crimes using kites, and then the police and the public will finally come to the conclusion that kites are much better than all other forms of transport. It's genius. It makes perfect sense. Don't question it. Don't even think about it. He didn't either. And he creates a mass identity of, what'll I call it? Kiteman. Of course he's going to call himself Kiteman. So he gives himself the name Kiteman, and he is going to start he's going to start getting involved with the mob, helping out Big Bill Collins. And so a few of his early ones actually kind of went unexpectedly good, is what I would say. It actually kind of worked. He dropped tear gas bombs from his oversized kite. He also freed Collins from jail at one point. He stole a precious ruby for Collins. And he even got the best over Batman and Robin, who I assume, having read these comics, were just kind of taken by surprise by how weird his weaponry was. Like, Batman was showing up ready to break bones, and the guy showed up with a kite, and he's like, I don't really want to bully him. And so a multitude of the villains, the criminals in Gotham, they'd actually started to like love Kiteman, because they were like, he's after beating the dynamic duo. He knows his shit. So they the villains basically formed a gang with him to be like, we'll be the Kiteman gang, you'll lead us, and we will be legends. And look, me and you both know that's a terrible idea, but they were looking for any sort of win at all at this point. They had lost so many times. And so the thugs helped Kiteman capture Batman. So what they did was they caught Batman and Robin in a crossfire. They brought them in, then they tricked them, and they captured Batman. And in the meantime, Robin was thrown from a skyscraper. Now you might think, bit harsh, but secondly, they didn't actually look over the edge to see if he was dead. They just kind of threw him, and then they were like, well, we have to assume the Boy Wonder is dead. Let's not look into that any further. We have Batman. So, but rather than kill Batman, the villains decided to trap the hero in their hideout because they needed to do a monologue, because that was really important, that Batman knew the plan of the villains before he died, obviously. Robin, of course, survived the fall and followed the criminals to their lair, freed Batman, who then, the two of them proceeded to kick the absolute shit out of everybody in the room, Kiteman included, and then they all got arrested. This glorious debut risked to be Browne's only solo outing in comic books, as he spent years in prison, unable, like most of his Gotham colleagues, to escape, because unlike Joker and Riddler and Two-Face, he's not smart, I would say. He's not the brightest, and also his gimmick doesn't really lend itself to escaping from a prison. So he's just kind of stuck there. It's the saddest thing ever, is that he can't escape even though he wants to, even though everybody else gets out of Arkham. And eventually he was brought out, he was released, he was not really taken seriously by anybody, and he was ready to don his kite again. Believing that a flying kite was uncatchable by definition, that's an actual thing in comic books, Kiteman started a series of payroll heists, only to be stopped again by Batman and Robin. Finally, Browne realised he couldn't have done any more in Gotham because, look, if we're being honest, Batman kicked the shit out of him every time he needed to do anything, because he's just a man with a kite. So he's like, I didn't even want to rob Gotham anyway. I didn't even like Gotham in the first place, so I'm going to go away. So he goes to Midway City in Michigan, and he's like, much easier. Midway City is the city of Hawkman and Hawkwoman, so not that much easier, but Kiteman just assumes, like, they have wings, he's got a kite, the story writes itself, I assume. So he wants to rob a museum in Midway City. It was I think the treasure was called the Golden Eagle or something with wings, and he even tries to get a robot pterodactyl there to start making a distraction while he goes in and robs the thing. Unfortunately for Kiteman, at that exact time, Zatanna, Zatanna the magician, she's actually magic in DC, super powerful. You don't really want to fuck with Zatanna. She's visiting her friends Hawkman and Hawkwoman at the time, and poor old Kiteman decides now is the perfect weekend to commit my crimes. So he tries to rob the museum. Fucking Hawkman, Hawkwoman and Zatanna show up. He immediately shits himself and basically gets defeated and humiliated straight away. And so, defeated and humiliated, Kiteman decides for an early retirement. He realises he's just not good at this. And even though he strived to kind of get people to love kites, he didn't have it in him. He didn't have the facilities for that big man. And so he moved to a place called Zandia, which is a faraway country that has a zero tolerance policy for superheroes in DC Comics. So it's where all the villains kind of go, and they get to live in it, a truly free country where you go to murder 50 people, but you can go to Zandia and just chill out. Nobody's going to arrest you. Just live your life. For someone like Charles Browne, this sounded like paradise, and he promptly moved there. Here he knew his first and only moments of tranquility and happiness, because very soon after, he's in his tranquility state, and he's just oh man, this is the life. The Young Justice team show up, they invade, and they try to basically capture all the villains that are there. Browne joins a common effort in repelling them, but the paradise is forever lost. And so, with his dreams in pieces, Kiteman came back to Gotham City, where everything had begun, and he's like, look, I don't really want to be a criminal anymore, I'm going to go straight. However, Deathstroke gives him a ring. He gets summoned to Wayne Tower by Deathstroke the Terminator, and Deathstroke wants to recruit him into the latest incarnation of the secret society of supervillains. That's how desperate they are, but I think it must have been a rib. Like, it must have been a joke that Deathstroke was bet that he couldn't get Kiteman into the secret society of supervillains. But he eventually asks him, and to Charles, this is a big moment. Like, this is the proudest moment he's ever had. Finally, somebody, Deathstroke, wants him in his team. And I mean, he's like, cool, and he's the proudest he's ever been, but he rejects the offer because he says, I've left that world. Look, man, we're the same, but at the same time I've kind of left that villainy behind me, and I'm going to just go my own way and just live my normal life. Deathstroke obviously takes that perfectly fine, don't worry about it, allows him to walk away for 2 or 3 steps before he throws him out the window, and without his kite he falls down the massive tower. Right? And now look, I think they were meant to kill him at this point, but he does miraculously survive. But soon after, DC launched Rebirth, which was in 2016. Every so often in comic books, like every 20 years or 10 years, they do this thing where they just kind of like reset everything. And in 2016 they launched Rebirth, DC did, and in that they just kind of restarted the whole universe and everyone gets their own thing. And what happened was he got his own arc in DC Rebirth. So in the Batman comics at the time, they were running a story called The War of Jokes and Riddles, and it's basically a story where the Joker and the Riddler are fighting over Gotham and Batman is stuck in the middle. Tom King was the writer, and he, an amazing writer, by the way, just a really great story that, like, as a writer he's very, very good at that. But Tom King, for the first time probably in about 60 years, just, I don't know why, but he just kind of liked Kiteman. So he gained a reputation as a cult favourite in the arc because he began to be like featured more prominently in the storyline, just because Tom King was writing it, and I think he thought it was funny to have Kiteman in it. And it also became the place where he came up with his very famous catchphrase, Kiteman, hell yeah, which you see a lot in the Harley Quinn show. But Kiteman, hell yeah, is such a... It's one of those where it's so dumb that it becomes funny and then it gets big. Because, like, it's such a ridiculous concept. If you try to, like, manufacture that as Kiteman hell yeah as a catchphrase, it's not funny or cool. But the fact that this idiot is saying it, it becomes cool just through, like, Twitter and online, and, like, people just talking about it and just laughing about how ridiculous it is. Kiteman just always says Kiteman hell yeah. He's not an adept fighter, by the way. He's beaten up multiple occasions on Batman. But what Tom King did was he added him to the story, and then he gave him an incredibly tragic backstory as to why he had become Kiteman. So they kind of took away a lot of the original origin, and instead they went with this one. And this is genuinely a haunting origin to give one of, like... Think of the stupidest character in comic books. They were like, yeah, let's just give him a horrifying origin because it'll be, like, really interesting. So the origin is that Charles Browne has a son named Charles, so Charles Browne Jr. So our Charles has a son, a normal guy. And Charles Browne Sr. takes his son to the park because he wants to instill the same love of kites in the young boy that he has himself. He still loves kites in this origin. Unfortunately, Browne had become involved in a war between Joker and Riddler in the middle of the story. Enigma had targeted Charles' son, right? So Charles Browne Jr. was targeted by Riddler. The boy flew one of his father's kites in the local park, but unbeknownst to Charles or his son, Charles Jr., Riddler had poisoned the fucking kite string, a slow-acting poison, and Charles later arrived at a hospital just in time to watch his son die. Amazing. So they were like, let's just give this character a horrifying reason as to why he takes up the mantle of Kiteman. And so in response, Browne constructed a suit, donned the name Kiteman, and vowed to exact revenge on Riddler by working for the Joker in the fucking in the war between them. He's like, Joker, I'm on your side. And Joker is like, okay, great, fantastic. Look, you are a valued member of the team. Just go over there. We have Deathstroke, so I'm cool with you. You just kind of go at the back. The origin that King granted Kiteman was, of course, very tragic, but it gave Browne the perfect motivation to become a supervillain. And look, they didn't really instill a sense of dread in the citizens of Gotham, I should say. At least there was like an understandable and emotional attachment to his seemingly silly name. So instead of just having him be in love with kites, now there's an actual reason, there's a logic behind the fucking dumb name of Kiteman. Although the majority of Joker's henchmen were defeated by Riddler's gang, Kiteman refused to give up, and this is where he becomes a fan favourite, because he won't stop fighting Riddler. Even when he gets the fucking shit kicked out of him, even when he's like nearly dead, he still gets up because he's like, I will fight you, Edward Nygma, you killed my son. And you can see why. True that, like, the people reading it, they started to really like Kiteman because there's something really endearing about the loser just non-stop never giving up. He just keeps getting up to take another beating. And so within the story, what happens is Browne is defeated by Batman and taken into custody, where both the hero and Riddler interrogated him until he revealed the location of Joker's hideout. Unfortunately, it was on the 73rd floor of a skyscraper, and all practical entrances were booby-trapped. You can see where this is going. So, proving his usefulness, Charles supplied Batman and the Riddler's gang with hang gliders. Now look, you might be thinking, why is he helping Riddler? He's kind of helping Batman, and Batman and Riddler are working together to stop Joker at this point. So he's he's been arrested, so he's got nothing left. So at this point you're like, okay, he's just kind of scared, he's helping the two of them. And in one of the most fantastic images to ever grace a comic book, in my opinion, this kite army broke through the windows of the skyscraper, Batman and Riddler and all their gang, and Riddler knocked the Joker unconscious. Finished with this ruse, Batman had Kiteman spring their trap. So Batman and Kiteman had made a separate plan away from Riddler, and with the push of a button, Kiteman sent Riddler's gang out of the window into high altitude, and Alfred apprehended all of them using the Bat Blimp as well. So within that, he got Joker's gang captured, but he also got his revenge on Riddler. Batman captured both gangs thanks to the help and love of Kiteman. So you can see Kiteman is just as good as Batman if you really think about it. Now look, Kiteman never been a particularly successful criminal, but I do view him much differently than I did probably a few years ago. For decades, he just kind of seemed like another lame villain, but with Tom King's writing, he gave him a lot of depth, relatability, like tragic circumstances, and he was quickly transformed into a sympathetic villain. And like this is why the love for like D-list characters still prevails, because if you get a D-list character, they can stay D-list, just give them a cool origin and people will just still like them whenever they pop up. They're like, oh, that's that guy, I love that guy. And like, I mean, you gotta you give me the lamest character ever the dumbest catchphrase, Kiteman, hell yeah, even better. Despite being a decent inventor and creative engineer, Charles Browne is not exactly the smartest man in the room. Whatever room we're speaking of, he is maybe the only person on the planet who takes himself and his criminal career seriously. As Kiteman, his kite plane allows him to fly faster than a simple glider. He also possesses a number of kite-related gadgets like trap net kites or flash bulb kites of varying dimensions and uses. Despite all of his dreams of glory and wealth, Kiteman has not really made a lot of money through crime, as he's mostly known as the walking parody of a supervillain, by everyone but himself. He has, of course, he's also appeared in the Harley Quinn animated show, where he's really, really great in that. And he's also now, he's voiced by the way, by Matt Oberg. But Kiteman, hell yeah, is now a spin-off happening thanks to the Harley Quinn show, that there is now a show called Kiteman Hell Yeah literally happening. He's getting his own spin-off finally. And I mean, is there no better character to get it? He deserves it, really, of all the things that he's had to do. Now look, in terms of powers and abilities, this is going to be quick, because he doesn't have any powers or abilities. He has excellent hand glider pilot skills. That's it. They say aviation, but really he is just good at gliding and not dying. Although he did die at one time. And that's kind of it. That is my report on Kiteman, a ridiculous character who starts terrible, becomes a crowd favourite because he's terrible, and then somehow still defeats Riddler and Joker at the same time because he might be the greatest. I'm not quite sure. If you like Kiteman, please let us know. I mean, you comment down below with some of your favourite moments of Kiteman. Just maybe comment Kiteman hell yeah if you want. As I said, we have hundreds of other episodes covering lots of DC and Marvel characters that we have here. We've probably covered one of your favourites. If you have any suggestions, send it to us on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook. Any of the messaging things there, just send it to us. We'll put them on the list. We're working our way through them. But I think that's it for this week of Hero Zero. So I have been Conor Lawler, and I will talk to you all next week, guys. Bye.